Hello, Guilty Feminist. This is Deborah. For today's episode, I sat down with two amazing activists and we talked about the recent news that the British Equality and Human Rights Commission has proposed a trans bathroom ban that goes even further than those seen in the most staunchly Republican states in America. In my conversation with Jess and Jude, you'll learn more about why this proposed ban is happening so quickly, why it's so clearly unworkable, and what is being done to stop it. Now, we use some abbreviations at times, so if you're not sure what they are, we talk about the EHRC, and that is the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which is a statutory body in the UK, which claims to have the responsibility to protect and promote the human rights of everyone in Britain. That's according to their website. And TSA is the Trans Solidarity Alliance, which both Jess and Jude are involved in. They work in partnership with cis allies to drive positive change for trans plus people in the UK. They're really great, so I hope you are really interested in this episode and activated by it. If you're up in Edinburgh this year for the many festivals, I'll be at the Edinburgh Book Festival talking about my book, 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, on Thursday, the 21st of August. And I'll be presenting my classic old school, the deep cut improvised comedy show Voices in Your Head as part of Shedinburgh on Friday, the 22nd of August. And we can now announce there will be a live Guilty Feminist as part of the London Podcast Festival at King's Place on Sunday the 14th of September at 4:30pm. For more information and to book tickets for any of these, go to guiltyfeminist.com and click on live shows. And now, on with the podcast. The Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guests, Jess Thompson and Jude Guaitamacchi, talking about trans solidarity. This is The Guilty Feminist, the podcast in which we explore our noble goals as 21st century feminists and the hypocrisies and insecurities which undermine them. Today we are talking about a very important subject, trans solidarity. Our first guest today is a legal researcher and journalist. They are undertaking a PhD in trans human rights law at the University of Leeds. They are head of policy and legal affairs at the Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance and work at Good Law Project on trans rights. Please welcome Jess Thompson. Woo! And with them is an award-winning trans rights campaigner. They are the founder of Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance and an inspirational speaker, talking to groups across the country about their story as a non-binary person and celebrating queer lives. Please welcome Jude Guaitamacchi. Woo! Okay, so I always ask everyone when they come on this show, do you have any I'm a feminist buts, Jude?
I'm a feminist, but I only found out who Simone de Beauvoir was yesterday.
And you're a feminist, but you forgot her name.
I forgot her name.
And you've called her, and you're a feminist, but you called her Simone de Beauvoir, which I feel undermines the seriousness of her contributions. Jess, do you have any I'm a feminist buts?
Yes, I'm a feminist, but quite frequently I find myself fluttering my eyelashes, smiling, nodding, saying, "Oh wow, really?" when men decide to patronisingly explain to me legal topics on which I happen to actually be an expert. But, you know, as long as they get to the right conclusion, I don't quite mind how they get there.
I mean, that's extremely patient of you. Extremely patient. Are you doing it to me now?
No.
That's the way you went, I thought, they're trying it on me. All right, so we've got to talk about something very serious, which is something I never thought we'd be talking about in the UK, but it's a proposed bathroom ban. This is what we used to hear about happening in places like Texas, and we thought, gosh, well, lucky nothing like that would ever happen here. So I think the big overarching question I've got is, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, so basically, in April, a decision was handed down by the Supreme Court in a case called For Women Scotland, which said that for the purposes of the Equality Act 2010, the equalities legislation we have in the UK, the thing that's meant to protect all of our human rights, sex, for the purposes of that act, has to be interpreted as biological sex. And so what that means is trans women are to be treated as men and trans men to be treated as women in practice. And what's happened since has been extraordinary, because whilst that was actually quite a narrow decision about one piece of legislation, people who want to remove trans people's rights have sort of taken it and run with it. So you look at the EHRC, again, they're the Equality and Human Rights Commission. They're the body who are tasked with protecting people's human rights in this country, an independent body. What they've done now is they've proposed guidance which, if it were to become law, would not only permit, but would mandate the exclusion of trans people from things like trans women from women's toilets, trans men from potentially women and men's toilets, telling them that they have to use third spaces. It would mean not just toilets as well, it would mean things like a women's walking group would be forced to exclude their trans women members, even if everyone involved in that walking group still wanted them to be part of it. It actually goes beyond what the Republicans have done in the US in some states.
Wow.
It's extraordinary.
So what does this mean for a random trans person who needs the loo?
So you better hope there's a disabled toilet. As a disabled person myself, I'm very aware that quite frequently there aren't. Because for trans men, for example, what they've been told is that you're not allowed to use the men's toilets because you're not a man. You're not allowed to use the women's toilets because you look too masculine. You might scare the women in it. So you're effectively excluded. You're being told you have to use a third space and that's what trans people should be campaigning for. It's segregation.
So, but also, you should be campaigning to use the loo you don't want to use in the first place. Surely, if you are a government and you're legislating something, you have to put in a whole heap of gender-neutral loos and insist that spaces have gender-neutral loos before you start telling people you need to go to the loo every day, all the time. You need to go to the loo 6 times a day. Like, how on earth, unless I'm overly using it, unless any doctors want to write it and tell me otherwise. So they can't just say, oh, and then campaign for it. What about that? Campaigns take months. Campaigns take years. And what about a woman who has very masculine gender expression? What about a butch lesbian or a straight woman who's got short hair and prefers just to wear, jeans and a check shirt? Will she then be told, go and find this invisible, yet to be legislated for, yet to be built third space? Like, where are we going with this?
Well, exactly. I mean, the whole point is, how are we going to police gender? This is bringing in the gender cops, so to speak, just to police how people should present, or the idea of what a woman or man should look like. And yet, actually, this will affect cisgender women as well. So, I mean, we're finding ourselves in a position where this whole thing is entirely unworkable, and it's quite frankly terrifying.
I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. Imagine the cost to businesses, right? Imagine you're a coffee shop and you've got a women's loo and a men's loo. You're being told that, you have to ask everyone who comes into your coffee shop to use the toilet for their birth certificate, so you can check which toilet they're using. I
mean, we will have to carry birth certificates, I suppose, at some point if this escalates.
Well, quite, or some, special ID that they create for this purpose. It's insane. It's really quite scary. That they've just sort of boldly asserted that this is now the case. There's been no debate in Parliament about this, no legislation. This is just being done behind closed doors. And businesses, normal people, women going about their everyday lives, women with short hair, are being told that they're the ones who are going to have to pay the price.
Do you know what really pisses me off? I went to, into the loo at Victoria Station the other day, and there was a big sign up that said, attendants cleaning these lavatories may be male or female. And I see this in bathrooms and in government bathrooms or state-run or state-sanctioned places, public loos, all the time. So what you're saying is a man might be in here cleaning the loo, just be aware of that. So a man who has presumably the ability to get into any of the stalls, a man who might be in a stall you want to be in, a man who, if he was looking under the stall, could say, I'm just mopping. So what are we saying? That we'd rather have male cleaners in loos than trans women who we've been using the loo with for decades. I've been using the loo with trans women all my life. I'm currently writing a novel about the 1920s. So many genderqueer people who were clearly using the public loo that made them feel most comfortable. So in other words, at least 100 years in this country, people have been using loos and nobody said anything.
Trans people aren't a threat to cisgender people. You know, we've been using these bathrooms and we've been using them freely. And now we're in a position where that's been taken away from us. And I know a lot of trans women. I've got a lot of friends who are trans women who are already terrified of using these loos and have been. And so this puts them at further risk. And I think it's really important for us to recognise that the trans community are a vulnerable community. You know, we are a community that are very heavily discriminated against. Most people have never met a trans person, therefore don't really know who we are. So buy into the narratives that they read in the media that dehumanises and demonises us, and we're just simply being used as a scapegoat. And I think the broader picture here is that this isn't just to do with the trans community. This is a human rights crisis. First they'll come for trans rights, then they'll come for yours. Hopefully people care enough about us to want to support us, but we can't fight alone. You know, the thing is, we are under 1% of the global population, so we don't have enough of a voice to be able to speak up for ourselves or to support ourselves. We really do need the help of allies to do that, but also the recognition that this is the same movement that is stripping women of their rights. The whole idea that trans people will threaten women's rights, it's a smokescreen. It's not true.
And we've seen in America a similar trans furore. I mean, I don't think it's worse anywhere than the UK, but we've seen in America a similar trans furore going on for some years. And now Trump is using that as the thin end of the wedge. They've taken off on the official government memorial Stonewall site, they've taken off the T for trans, and now they've taken off the B for bi. And you just can see those letters dropping. And I keep seeing stuff on my Instagram about all sorts of ways that they're trying to undermine gay rights, lesbian rights. I have friends whose parents voted for Trump who said to their gay kids, no one cares about gay people. This is about abortion. This is about, all sorts of things. This is about immigration. This is about. No one cares about equal marriage anymore. That's one. That's done. And they were saying, no. They're gunning for it and they're coming for it. And they're gunning for it and they're coming for it. But I never thought I would see this in the UK.
Yeah.
Because it feels like the culture here has been so different for so long. And I have never, ever, ever heard of any of my friends or any in my community or anyone who's come through the doors of my podcast for over 9 years ever say they've had any kind of incident of any sort with a trans person in a loo. The only stories I've ever heard is a very good friend of mine who's slightly masc-presenting, not that masc-presenting, non-binary, being told at the Royal Albert Hall in the long queue outside the loo, this is the queue for the ladies, and they who were assigned female at birth said, yes, I know. That's why I'm in it. And then the woman covered, really embarrassed, went, oh, no, I'm asking, is this the queue for the ladies? And she was like, that's not what she was asking. She was telling me, get out of the queue. And that's I've still heard that story a number of times, but I actually normally hear it from people whose assigned gender at birth was female. I normally hear it from butch lesbian friends and that kind of thing. So that's one of the really scary things about this. But the main scary headline is that trans people are feeling frightened and have nowhere to pee, which is a basic human right. And what it does is it forces people to stay in their homes. This is how it used to be for all women. They didn't have female public loos, and it kept women on a really short leash from their homes. And again, you just don't think about the things that have been fought for before you came along. We've only ever known public loos, so we don't know any different from that. But that really was the case. And I feel like this is another way of keeping trans people away in their homes. Have the government said there's any clarity on this?
Well, so all the statements from the government have been that the Supreme Court judgment is incredibly clear and that trans people can't use the toilet, which isn't what the judgment says, by the way. And, I work for Good Law Project, and we are currently bringing a legal challenge to the EHRC guidance on the basis that we don't think that's what the judgment says and that they've gotten the law wrong.
What does the judgment say?
Well, that's very complicated. Right. And that's kind of the point we're trying to make, is that it's not particularly clear. It's not all now very simple. There are lots and lots of different pieces of legislation that interact in these areas, the Equality Act being only one of them, and for Women in Scotland concerns solely the Equality Act. So if you have a gender recognition certificate, for example, for the purposes of marriage, we know that still, you'll still be treated as what it says on that certificate. And there are like so many other pieces of legislation to do with like workplace toilet provision and things where the EHRC has just kind of assumed that it automatically reads across, and we don't think it does. And I think the issue is that this isn't all, just like a technical issue of law. It's a practical issue of human rights. We have the Human Rights Act in this country. It requires courts to interpret legislation in line with people's human rights, and that includes trans people's human rights. So there's case law at the European Court of Human Rights, case called Goodwin, which is specifically what led to gender recognition in this country, led to the creation of legal gender recognition, which says that basically you can't place trans people in an intermediate zone. And that means where you're not quite one sex or the other, right? So you're a woman for some purposes and a man for some others. And I think what's happened, at least with the EHRC's interpretation of For Women in Scotland, is trans people have been put right back in that space. And me and lots of other legal people can't understand how that is at all in compliance with that judgment, how that isn't absolutely a massive violation of trans people's Article 8 rights to respect for a private life. Because, at Good Law Project, we've had so many people come to us already for help, telling us that even though this proposed guidance isn't statutory yet, hasn't become law, they posted an interim update on their website saying this is now the position. And just from that, loads of employers and service providers are now taking actions to exclude their trans employees and service users from the toilets, from changing rooms, and it's led to people, going off work sick because, the stress of it, because they've been outed at work, because they've been told, you're not allowed to use the women's toilets you've been using while you've worked here for the last 10 years. You have to walk downstairs 3 floors to use a different special gender-neutral toilet we've set up for you. And no one ever asks, oh, but won't it look weird in front of all of your colleagues so you're not out to that you're suddenly now using the special separate toilet 3 floors down? I can't understand at all how anyone thinks this is okay, but it's happening right now to trans people. It's devastating our lives.
So what happens next?
Well, that's it. That's what we're trying to not just talk about, but also really raise awareness about. And thankfully, people like Jess are speaking out and helping so many of us understand this, because you started off saying, what does this all mean? And I was one of those people. I don't have a legal mind. I'm not from a political background. So my sort of understanding was very limited. And now I've been able to really understand what's happening. And it is terrifying. I believe that most people don't actually realise what's happening. It's not landing. They haven't got their head around it yet. So we really want to help people to understand what's happening better, break it down for them, but also in what they can do to challenge it, because we do have one chance, right? This is our chance to try and do something about it. And politically speaking, Jess mentioned that this is just going to be pushed through without any vote, without any scrutiny, and with no democracy, essentially. It won't be seen in Parliament. And so what we want to do is to not just help people understand what's going on, but to encourage them to contact their local MP and to tell them to speak up and to ask to see it in Parliament, so there can be some kind of democratic process.
I mean, ultimately, it's on Keir Starmer and Bridget Phillipson to stop this, right? They keep talking about the clarity of the Supreme Court judgment. Very fortunately, we live in a country where our government and our Parliament are allowed to make laws, not just listen to the interpretation of them. So if they think that the court has interpreted the law in this way and they're not happy with that, they can legislate to fix things. They can choose not to make this EHRC statutory code of practice bathroom ban into law. All of the power is in our politicians' hands. They're going to try and hand wave it away and pretend that they don't have a choice because it's politically expensive for them to actually stand up and fight for trans people's human rights right now, or at least that's what they think. We've got a government who are chasing reform to the right. As far as they're concerned, the trans community, maybe they're quite happy to throw under the bus. So what we have to do is we have to make it as politically expensive, if not more politically expensive, for them to choose to do that. And that means putting pressure on them. And that means talking to our MPs, making clear that this is going to have a massive cost to business, that this is undemocratic, that this is going to lead to a mess with regards to the European Convention on Human Rights and trans people's human rights in this country.
And it's solving nothing.
Yeah. What are they achieving?
What's the problem? Where has this massive problem come in? Luz has stalls. Luz, you go into the stall and you're on your own and the door is locked. I just don't understand what they think they're solving. Is there this massive problem of, I've never heard one story, not even reported in the Daily Mail. So what are they solving?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's this massive blanket ban that's completely disproportionate, that forces people who want to be trans inclusive to exclude trans people. It's completely unjustifiable. I think they know it's unjustifiable somewhere deep down. It's just that they're not brave enough to speak out. So we need to encourage people to be brave enough to speak out. And that means everyone.
So who gets a say in this? Like, who exactly will decide? Is it just Keir Starmer, or is it...
It's the government. It's so the EHRC have got this guidance. They've said they're not consulting on their legal position, that they've decided what their legal interpretation is. Their consultation exercise, which had over 50,000 responses, an absolutely enormous response, was purely aimed at making sure that the way they had communicated their bathroom ban was sufficiently clear. So they're going to take this, they're not going to change it, they're going to send it to Bridget Phillipson, and what she's going to do is she's going to lay it before Parliament. But it gets laid before Parliament on something called a negative procedure, which means that there's no debate, there's no vote, no scrutiny. It just sort of automatically becomes law if no one stops it.
Oh, wow.
Big Speeches is back. Hello, Guilty Feminists. It's Jessica Regan here. Delighted to tell you that our online communication workshop, Big Speeches, is back with a bang for the end of the summer. Okay, so if you would like to participate in our workshop, which has helped hundreds of Guilty Feminists already, please do book for one of the following dates. We're hosting the workshops at the end of August, the 30th and 31st, Saturday and Sunday, and those workshops are at 10:30 a.m. At the end of September, we're hosting workshops the 28th and the 27th, so Saturday and Sunday again, and those workshops are at 3 p.m. So hopefully there's a bit of flexibility with time zones and routines, etc. We want to help anyone who wants to participate in this workshop make it happen. We have a subsidised rate, and we have also lowered our prices for the standard rate. So please do get online, places are limited, and we really want to accommodate you. Looking forward to seeing you there.
So what work are you, the Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance, doing about this?
So we've launched this campaign, which is specifically raising awareness and asking people to take those actionable steps. So the more people do that, the better. And it's okay that you don't understand perhaps what's been happening, what's going on. We just need people to act. And we've got a lot of resources via our website. All you have to do is go on the website. There are email templates. There's more of an explanation as to what's going on. So we have all those resources for people. But I mean, I set up Trans Solidarity Alliance several years ago with the foresight that things were going to get worse. And actually, as much as so much of this may have seemed to just have suddenly happened, actually, we've been watching it happen over the years. And the problem being is that not enough people truly understand these issues, or have ever met any of us to actually understand what these experiences have been, but we've watched it happen. I as a trans rights campaigner I knew who TERFs were far before sort of the general public, the anti-trans groups that were out there. And over the years, they've gained so much leverage and they've been able to have a lot of political influence. And that's been part of this problem. But so we're a bit late to the game with all of this, but we need to do what we can in this time frame before it becomes law. We need to act now.
Yeah, I think the really worrying thing is that it's not just members of the general public who don't know what's going on. From our conversations, it's MPs as well. They don't understand this process. Half of them are very new to Parliament following the last general election. So a lot of it, I think, is about this exercise in making clear that people care, that we as a community, as feminists, we care about what's going on, and telling our MPs what's going on and making sure that people speak up.
So tell your MP, tell your friends who you believe are compassionate to this cause, to tell their MPs. Talk to members of your family that may have been scared by a lot of tabloid press or even broadsheet press, and ask them to think it through about, well, if someone comes into your bathroom at work, are you looking at them and going, are you who you say you are? I think you have to ask yourself, if your best friend at work, if you discovered suddenly that you used the loo with, and you suddenly discovered they were trans and you never knew that, would you suddenly become scared of them quickly going in for a pee at lunchtime? I don't think you would. Why? Why would it mean that they were a predator? And that's really the implication here. And there's a lobby been working quite hard for some years on just linking. We're just asking questions. But I've said it before, if there was press every single day in every single newspaper virtually saying, just asking if women should ever get into taxis with male taxi drivers, just because I heard a story about a taxi driver who assaulted a woman, just asking questions, the impact quite soon would be, oh, should I get into the taxi? Because I keep hearing this same narrative, just asking questions. Women would start to get scared and taxi drivers would start to go, love, I'm not going to hurt you. Like, it would create this fear. And the truth of the matter is you are much more likely to be assaulted by an Uber driver than you are by a trans person. And yet we don't have that narrative. We don't have that narrative. So anything you just ask questions about all the time, that if the questions have an implied pejorative answer, you start to brainwash people that there is a problem. But I think people need to ask themselves, have they ever had a problem? Do they know anyone who's had a problem? Or have they been fed something for a political agenda and an anti-LGBTQ plus agenda?
I mean, I think it's also about women's rights and women's freedom of association. If I'm a woman, I want to run a book club, and I want to be able to include trans women in my book club. I'm being told that that's not allowed, that I'm banned from doing that, right? This isn't just about being allowed to exclude trans people where you can show that that's proportionate or whatever, which is what things used to be. It's saying that no one is ever allowed to be inclusive for any reason at all. It's an absolute sweeping and regressive mandatory ban on trans people's inclusion in public life.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It is honestly terrifying. I was talking to a friend yesterday, actually, and we were saying I've started to think about the sound of my wee when I'm in a cubicle, because what if someone can tell, and I can't believe that I've already got this hypervigilance of like, what if someone's listening? What if someone, and my friend was just saying, she's a trans woman. She said, oh, me too. And I think that probably a lot of trans people can relate to that right now, where we're already starting to feel that hypervigilance, but it's already having real life consequences. I already know people that are being excluded from spaces, and I dread to think what that's going to look like when this actually comes into law.
Now, there have been times, I don't mind admitting, in a crowded club or pub or at a venue, seeing a show, where, and I know this happens a lot at big Guilty Feminist tour shows, where there's no queue for the men's and there's a huge queue for the ladies. And I and many other women I know have just nipped into the men's quickly and used the men's loo. Will that now, if this law goes through, be illegal?
According to the HRC, venues aren't allowed to allow you to do that. They'd have to try and stop you or have a policy against it. That's the rules.
But now we can, but later we won't be able to, or even now we're not meant to.
As in, their stance is that this is currently the law and they're merely explaining it in their code of practice. But yes, if this code of practice becomes law, then venues will not be allowed. They cannot allow women to use the men's facilities for any reason. And this goes further, by the way. It means, for example, if you've got the women's toilets and you want to take your, for example, 5-year-old male child into the toilet with you, that might not be allowed either.
Well, that's insane.
Well, think about like the actual risk that puts
The 5-year-old at.
Correct.
That's absolutely wild. And can I ask, places like the Old Vic, which got new loos, and they did gender neutral loos, and they said, look, this way there's just stalls, and this way there's urinals and stalls. And what happens is most women go this way and most men go that way. And there's so many stalls now. The stalls are floor to ceiling, so no one could possibly get in or out. Great locks. I mean, I personally like to pee alone. I don't know how the listeners feel, but I'm really a big fan of just absolutely peeing alone. And that's why I enjoy a locking door. But that works so well for me that it's gender neutral because, to be honest, people tend to go one way or the other. But if there's a long queue, I could nip into the other one. That would be my choice. Will they, by law, have to get rid of those and say women and men again?
The EHRC says that that might be unlawful to just provide those, that you might also have to provide single-sex toilets. So we can have a whole collection of toilets. We can have women's toilets, men's toilets, gender-neutral toilets, disabled toilets, and, we can fit these all into the smallest venues imaginable.
I mean, I'm going to say the Old Vic have done wonders with the tiny space that they've got, given it's a Victorian building. I really can't see that they're going to have any more place for loos. So I think there'll be no gender neutral loos. And trans people will have to, campaign for them?
Yeah.
To create more space like Narnia while not peeing. And I don't know if you've ever campaigned, but if you ever have needed bathroom breaks, it's well campaigning. I genuinely don't understand what they think people are going to do.
Well, I think they probably just expect trans people to work on TARDIS technology and find some way.
Listen, if any community can do it, it'll be you.
Hopefully.
Well,
Seems like that might be what we need.
We're like the X-Men, I have to say. I feel like we really are. Alan Cumming called us superheroes, and I loved that because I just thought, you know what, I feel that. I think that we have so many challenges, but we are a resilient community. We had the largest Trans Plus Pride in the world, actually, this weekend. And it was such a wonderful time of celebration and joy. And that's been one thing that through all of this, I feel like has been so important for us to be able to balance everything that's going on with joy, community, and of course, our wonderful allies like yourself.
Any trans joy stories that you've heard lately to give us some feeling of energised happiness to take forward in this?
I mean, I'd say that was my example. Like, Trans Pride was just so powerful this year, the amount of people that were there, but also just to come together and see friends, and just, there was so much joy, there was so much power. And I find that every year with Trans Pride London, I find that it's just such an incredible event. And I feel like we need more of them. We need more places and spaces for joy. We have Trans Secret Santa coming up, which is our joy project of the year, which is so lovely.
Love that.
We raise money for presents for trans youth. They can apply for a present, and we send gifts out to trans youth across the country. But projects like those are also really important. And
we met at the Diva Awards recently.
We did.
Diva Awards, lesbians' highest honour. And I was so touched by how basically everyone who gave out an award and everyone who received an award spoke up for trans solidarity, trans rights. You were wearing a phenomenal jacket. There's pictures of me on Instagram if you want to go and see it. It's Jude's arse, really, and my front. And I know which one was more glamorous, because you had that, what does it say on the back of your jacket in sequins?
So this year was Unite for Trans Rights, which was the name of our mass lobby campaign that we did very recently.
Yeah, we had a record-breaking mass lobby, the biggest LGBT lobby in history, of people coming to Parliament, speaking to their MPs, making MPs look them in the eye as they told them exactly what impact this EHRC guidance would have them on their lives. And it's really, I think, that energy combined with joy, like that's what we want to take forward. We're a small community, but we've got each other's back. We just need help.
Mm-hmm. You know how to throw a great party, I have to say. And that kind of spirit, energy, music, if you can bring anything like that, You can write a joyful poem or a funny song or get together with a trans artist and create something to put out online that also creates play, joy, love. That all helps because it makes people see it as a lovely, generous space of wonder rather than just, everything's bad again, everything's tough again, everything's miserable again. I think we need that hand in hand as much as we can. So if you are an artist of any sort, create a little bit of something, create some lovely content to put out there that is either with trans solidarity or with a trans person, and use that lovely piece of art that's funny or that's playful or that's musical to direct people back to this campaign where they might be more than inclined to donate, to engage, to get involved. And I think those kinds of things will really, really help the community and the spirit and the story.
I've been really inspired by how creative people have gotten with their allyship, like Kate Nash, for example. I mean, that song is an educational resource, right? She included so much, and it's so educational that now I'm directing people towards that song just to, be able to listen to what, because she included so much in that. And I just feel like there are so many creative ways that people can show up and actually to think outside the box. But also the idea, I like what you were saying about the support, because when the hate is so loud, sometimes that's all we hear. And there's something so powerful about amplifying love. And we had a slogan for our Trans Youth Are Loved campaign, and that was make love the loudest voice. So check in on your trans friends, send them a little message, see how they're doing, offer your support, because I think that goes a long way as well.
That's a great suggestion. Well, I'm so sorry about it, and glad we are able to have you on the podcast today to talk about it, to spread the word. And we ask our listeners and our viewers to get out there, make some noise about it, and say, this is not a problem, trans people using the loo that they feel most comfortable in. It's never been a problem. It's never going to be a problem. This is just some persecution. And it's making life more difficult, more frightening for trans people who are already in a minority, who are already demonised in the press. Is there anything else that we can do about it, or you'd like us to know about it, Jess?
So, actually, we have been talking a lot as an organisation about the absurdity of what's going on as well, right? In that this isn't just about a bathroom ban, it's about a bathroom ban that's meant to be somehow enforceable, that you're meant to be able to tell which people are trans when they come and use the toilet. And so we've actually made some badges, like this one here, that say, maybe I'm trans. So we're encouraging people to wear these when they go to the loo.
Thank you very much.
When they go into gendered spaces, just add to the confusion of the toilet police that we're apparently deciding to adopt in this country, I think. And all of the money that is raised from selling the badges we're using to fund our work. So
great. And is there any other way we can donate, Jess?
We've got a GoFundMe, So we have a GoFundMe that is live, and people can donate to it. You can buy a badge. We have been receiving donations as well. So we are a team of volunteers. All of our work we don't get paid for, and at the moment we're working around the clock. So any help would be helpful.
And it is, where do we go for the GoFundMe?
TransSolidarityAlliance.com.
And for socials?
We are at TransSolidarity on Blue Sky.
And on Instagram, we are at Trans Solidarity Alliance.
Wonderful. We'll all give you a follow. We'll all put our hands in our pockets and try and rattle that tin and get a little bit of money together. We know that things are tight. We understand that. And we know that lots of you have been giving as much as you can to Gaza and other causes. But even if you've got the price of a cup of coffee, it will help. So do whatever it is that you can, or maybe do like a little Zoom quiz night like it's the old days with your friends and charge a little fee for it. Do something fun to raise a little bit of money, because it really will help. And it will also make trans people feel like that you have solidarity, that there is solidarity and people care enough even to give you a couple of quid. Obviously, if you can give a couple of grand, do that. I'm not putting you off giving a lot of money. And if we can rally round together and at least stop this, it will give the trans community huge, huge hope. So let's give it everything we've got. Is there anything you came to say that you didn't get to say?
No, just support the cause, get involved, stand with us in the trenches. We need you now more than ever.
Thank you very much, Jess, and thank you very much, Jude. See you in the loo. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guests, Jess O. Thompson and Jude Guaitamacchi. The Guilty Feminist theme tune was composed by Mark Hodge. The producer was Tom Salinsky for The Spontaneity Shop. Thanks to Gina Dicios, Zainab Mohammed and everyone at Tileyard Studios, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com.
Amazing.
Which is, I'm a feminist, but... oh, God. And now I've forgotten what's the name of her book.
There you go.
What's the name of her book? Famous Simone de Beauvoir book.
The Second Sex?
Yeah, no. Oh, well, forget it. Cut that out because
That was awful. That was embarrassing.
No, that was good. That was really funny.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it's really funny. Your bit is really funny. My bit, not so funny. All right. The Guilty Feminist is provided exclusively from Acast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.